And I would say don't go any finer than 180. If you get involved in any spit shining, you'll cause yourself adhesion problems. Now, on mahogany, the stain goes down on the mahogany first. Then we come along with a vinyl coat, what we call the vinyl sealer. You can buy it in gallon cans. And I think the solid content is around 22%. Am I right on that, John?
I know musical instrument has less solid than cabinet, but I think it is 18 to 22%.
Yeah. They say cut the vinyl sealer for your vinyl coat. Cut the vinyl sealer by 50%. Now we're just talking basically vinyl. The purpose of the vinyl is to stick to the wood, and everything follows from there on. So we have this is a water stain. It's a maple water stain. You allow that to dry maybe about an hour.
Excuse me.
Spray your vinyl coat on, or two vinyl coats. You can do it. Pardon?
What do you cut it with, the vinyl?
Lacquer thinner.
Just lacquer thinner?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use basically K22 lacquer.
Okay, thank you.
Thinner.
That's from Sherwin-Williams.
That's all my materials are Sherwin-Williams.
Will butyl acetate work?
Pardon?
Can you use butyl acetate?
Yes.
More of a retardant.
That'll work as well. That'll make it flow a little bit better if need to be. We now have our vinyl coats on. We got two vinyl coats on. You can actually put it on wet, what they call wet on wet. Allow it to dry. They prefer 4 hours of correction there. Minimum dry is 4 hours. Preferred is overnight. I do all overnight dry. Don't try to rush into the finish and get it done in
The overnight drying is for the vinyl, for the sealer coat?
Yes, for the vinyl coat.
Okay.
The sealer will come later. I'll explain that
Okay.
at a later point there. Now we're going to do the guitar, and if you have the mahogany type guitar, you do the same basic thing as the neck.
What kind of filler are you using?
I still have the old style filler yet, which is from Lawrence McFadden, but Sherwin-Williams also makes their
And that's a
fillers.
silica-based mineral carrier, pour pack, similar to pour pack.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can cut the filler with mineral spirits and also naphtha. Naphtha will cut the filler. There's a recipe for that. I don't exactly have it right here in front of me.
The Martin recipe?
Pardon?
The Martin recipe?
Basically, yes.
2 drops of naphtha per tablespoon of filler. That'll cut your flash time down from 45 minutes to about 5.
They also use mineral spirits. Mineral spirits will lengthen your drying time from your filler. If you have quick drying time, you can add more mineral spirits to it, and then it won't flash off. That's for the mahogany. For the rosewood, there's no stain on there, of course. When you do your vinyl coats on rosewood, be careful not to oversaturate the instrument. Rosewood, you're going to bleed the detail, and the detail on the wood will widen, and you won't have that fine look from the rosewood. 2 coats on there on rosewood, overnight dry. Now, the rosewood may have bindings on it, or you may have wooden bindings on it. If you have bindings, when we get involved in the cleaning the bindings, they'll have to be rounded here again. Lacquer doesn't stick to a 90. And the sound hole should be deburred and rounded a little bit. You don't want no sharp edges in the sound hole. Before you apply your vinyl coats, make sure you tape up the dovetail and where the neck goes on the bottom of the fingerboard there. Now that we have the filler on, we're going to allow that to dry overnight, and then we're going to be cleaning the side dots, which this neck don't have, side dots and the binding or wooden binding you don't clean. We're going to allow that to dry for a day or two, and then we're going to get ready for the second vinyl coats on top of the filler. We'll add one vinyl coat, and then they tell you to scuff. I take a shortcut at that point, and I'll cut the vinyl sealer to about 30%, and I'll apply that to the instrument. Also, when the vinyl becomes tacky, I come along with the first clear coat. They tell you in between there that you should scuff, and I eliminate that little bit of a process, simply because of scuffing and dry times and scuffing and dry times. At that point, when you got your first clear on, you want to wait about an hour for that to really dry, and then you apply your next 3-4 coats of lacquer. Yes, John?
Now, also, a lot of people may have heard about using shellac for a sealer. Your thoughts on that?
Right. The shellac, like I say, the recipe calls for bare wood, no shellac. What happens is if you come along and you put shellac on top of that guitar, and I come along with my vinyl coat, I may be in deep trouble as far as adhesion problems. And then it causes double work for me. To eliminate that, lacquer, I think lacquer will adhere to shellac, but you have to skip that area there. So what you're essentially doing is causing extra work for the finisher, because he's got to tape that up so you don't get the vinyl on top. Now we're up to about 4 coats of lacquer, and dry times between there is about 30 minutes a coat. I don't scuff between it. They do recommend it, but I think if you have a little bit of a bite of at least 10–15% of lacquer thinner, K22, or if you want to use the butyl acetate, that's enough bite into there, but make sure that you're putting it on heavy enough. If you spray and you put dry spots on here, you're going to be causing extra problems at a later date.
Do you do no overnight between those 4 coats? Or do you
Every
4 wet coats 30 minutes apart?
Yeah.
What's your build? What are you looking for a build thickness on that?
Build thickness at that point, I can't really tell you, but we do have rules as far as lacquer, that when you end up finally getting into the polish stage, the rule of thumb is about 7, 8. You don't want to go any higher. You can go higher. If you have a sunburst top, you got to protect yourself that you don't polish it through at the end of the line. You got to protect that. So naturally, if you have aging toner on there and you have a shaded top, you're going to go a little bit heavier on the mill agent for protection. The average 7-8 mils, some of them like it a little bit thinner, but you're putting yourself on thin ice. You're putting the individual that sands the guitar, if you're not doing it yourself and you have somebody sanding it, you can knock right on through that base coat. And you don't want to do that. You're putting a sander, you're putting a polisher on real thin ice if you're down into the 6 mil section, 6/1000ths. Now, next thing we're going to be doing is after the first sanding, we're going to inspect the instrument for holes in the pearl or dings or leftover dents that you may have had on the very beginning. You want to drop those in. If you've got high and low spots along your binding, you got to use hardened lacquer. Hardened lacquer, which I put into a simple little cup like this and let the thinners flash off. You take it, convert it over to this after about 2 days after the thinner's off. You pour it into a little bit of a bottle, and you pour this bottle, pour a little content of this bottle into the baby jar, and take your brush, your cat whisker brush, whatever you want to do, and drop it in. Now the brush that you're using, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be pulling it out of thinner. You want to make sure that you have that thinner off of that end of that brush, because if you don't have all that thinner off and you dip it into the hardened lacquer, that thinner is going to go around that hardened lacquer that you want to drop this little area into. And now instead of having a pinhole mark, you got the thinner that goes around the lacquer. Now you got a 1/16 of an inch or 3/16 of a mark, indentation. Soften the lacquer again. This causes a little bit of extra work in smoothing that out. Now we got basically everything dropped in. We got the size of the binding, the high, lows, and whatnots on the binding there. We got to drop those in. I call that little episode body and fender work. Body and fender work is just exactly like an automobile individual that does body work. He's taking this hardened. He isn't, but I am. I'm using this hardened lacquer to fill in the lows. He's using body putty to fill in his lows, dings and dents and whatnot. Now, the main thing is we want to allow this instrument to dry for several hours, and then we're going to say, let's prefer overnight. The following day, we're going to resand those high spots, and we're going to make sure that they're even. When we sand for what we call first sanding, we don't want to take all the pores out. If we try to get all the pores out in the first sanding, you're going to cause a lot of highs and lows and a lot of weak spots in certain given areas. Leave the pores halfway in, basically halfway, and you'll be in pretty good shape. Now we're going to spray the guitar for second sanding. Second sanding, we're going to spray the guitar, the sides and the back, and we're going to skip on the top. The main thing is we don't want high millage built on that top there. We're going to skip a coat. So we're looking at this, and we're going to spray another 2 coats complete on the whole instrument, allowing drying time of 30 minutes per coat. And we're going to let this dry overnight, or preferable 2 to 3 days, because we want all these thinners to escape out of that nitro. If this guitar keeps on reeking, add your dry time. Add a day. add 2 days. If you do it too fast, you're going to have a lot of thinners trapped into that guitar, and by the time you're at the end of the line to polish it, it's still going to reek, and you might have a nice smooth finish, but in another month to a month and a half, it may really shrink down. Finishing the guitar too fast is a no-no. Now that we got all the sanding done, we're going to be spraying. We're going to inspect again for highs and lows and fill-ins, and then we're going to spray it for polish. Here again, 97% of the pores should be out of there. You spray it 2 more coats for your final spray. Make sure that you put enough on and cover each area. If you overspray, you're going to orange peel. When you orange peel, you're going to work hard to get that down when you come to polish it. Your polish buffers, I use 7-inch woolen pads with an approximate speed for cutting purposes is about maybe like 800 RPM. That woolen pad, you got a cake, and the whole purpose of that woolen pad is, when you have a cake, you create a friction. When you create the friction, you start taking that orange peel off of there, and you start in shining up. I use, people will wet sand, some people will wet sand for polishing. I don't do any wet sand. What I do is, basically speaking, this is nothing more than an air drill, a 90-degree air drill. It's adapted with your hook and loop system. I use material here which is basically a thin Scotch-Brite caked up with polish, and I use this.
You put polish right on the Scotch-Brite?
Pardon?
You put polish right on the Scotch-Brite?
Yes, yes. Yes, you gotta cake it up.
And which layers, which grit or which Scotch-Brite?
You don't want too aggressive, maybe the medium.
Medium?
Right.
Nothing worse
This can be bought in 3-inch OD.
Okay.
This is nothing more than peeled on.
I get all mine in sheets, so
Right.
some of that.
Now I start out with the sides, and the sides pre-polished with this. If you take your 7-inch buffer and you're working with a triple aught or a double aught, the 7-inch buffer you can overlap on the sides here. The next thing you know, you're burning this edge, or you're burning this edge. By using this little air drill here, you're staying within your limits, okay? Now, when you get to the back and you get to the top, then it's a different story. But you still can use the air drill if you got a lot of overspray on it. Now, the next thing we're going to be talking about, let's just assume we have this polished, and we're going to be talking about the final finish on the necks. The final finish on the neck right now, I use a modifier. You can use your regular clear lacquer with a modifier added to it. By adding this modifier to a certain portion of clear lacquer, you can come out with a satin finish. This satin finish will shine after you get miles on that neck. That's normal. You can pass that around there. This has a high gloss head plate, sanded basically like we discussed here.
Is the modifier only in the last lacquer coat?
Pardon?
Is the modifier only in the last lacquer coat you put on?
Yes, yes. Now, what I do there is I shoot it first when I'm getting into the final stage of that. I'll shoot one clear on, and then the modifier mixed in with the clear lacquer, that'll go right on top of that clear. No scuffing in between. No scuffing in between. How's it look, Mike?
Well, Dale, you do a good job.
Thank you. Now, those are necks that were basically seconds, I think, John. That was a second neck, if I'm not mistaken, on that builder there.
I think that one there may have been a Henline Moon neck.
Okay. So, now when it comes to be putting the machines on the neck at this point, if your machine does not fall into that hole into the neck, you're going to use a tapered reamer, and open up that neck, the OD of that hole there, so that your machine will fall on through.
Yeah, that was the Martin one.
What some people do is they'll take that machine and put it in behind the back part of that neck. And what they'll do is they'll take that nut and washer and tighten down on that machine. But if that machine is binding, what they're going to do is crush that head plate by forcing that machine to come through. So make sure that your machine slip through, and when you come to torque down your nut and washer, that you're not using the top part of the head plate to give you the pull through there.
As a clamping call.
Now you're going to have a touch-up on your job. Now you're going to add 2-3 more weeks till you get all the dents out and the build-up there. When you get involved in touch-up, you get involved in another week, and another week into the program. Let's just say you burn a guitar through. Hopefully it's on rosewood, and it's not on the stain portion of it, because then you got to match the stain and blend it and try to fog it in. If you do it on rosewood, it happens on rosewood, and you got a little spot right here where you burn through. What you want to do is tape up a little bit of a top with your craft paper. Tape around here with masking tape. And incidentally, when you tape up the instrument on fresh lacquer, make sure you put your masking tape down on a piece of wood like this. And if you're using a piece this long, push it down on here and then rip it back up. It takes the adhesive off of that masking tape, that fresh stuff. That fresh adhesive will really bite into your finish. If all possible, don't try to let it on for 2-3 days. Try to get it off of there as soon as you can after you're finished touching up. Now you got this spot right down here. Now we're down to where what we call the base coat. It's like you're doing a driveway, you have a base coat. This is the whole purpose of the vinyl start out. The filler sticks to the vinyl. We got another coat of vinyl, and then the sealer sticks to that, and then your lacquer stick to that, and it all works together. It's all a recipe to it. Now we got this little spot right here. So we're going to take a little bit of a touch-up gun, and the air pressure should be maybe 20 pounds or a little bit better. Mix a little bit of thinner in with your lacquer. Don't make it too thin. and take your spot here where you have your paper over here, work at it this way. Don't try to touch up and get the overspray on the other side here, or else you're going to be causing a lot more problems. So you want to just tweak this small little area. We got a day into it, a 3-day into it. What you want to do is spray this, let it dry, maybe another hour, spray it again, build up the 2-3 coats that you already went through from first sanding to second sanding, because you have a total of maybe 5-6 coats there. They got to be replaced. You got to put them back on again. So you're going to let this dry here a little bit, tweak it, and then have a second gun with thinner in it. And what you want to do when you spray each coat on here, you want to take maybe like every other coat, hit it with a little bit of thinner around there, and you'll knock the overspray off. The overspray will hassle you at the very end. Now that we got this touched up and built up, we got to wait. We got another 2-3 days of wait time. Because if you hit it too fast, you're going to dry in. That spot will dry in.
How much is too much thinner when you're doing that overspray routine?
Pardon?
Just a quick spritz?
Yeah, just a little bit. You'll be, once when you do a couple, you'll be able to tell. You don't want to flood it, because flooding it, here again, we're going right down through the coats of lacquer. We're re-softening that whole area. So you don't want to flood it. It's just so you knock that area in. Try to keep it as small as possible.
You want to fog that on there, kind of?
Yes, you could do that, sure. Yeah. And by blending that in, it'll knock the overspray, and the overspray will blend in with your clear lacquers again. So now we want to wait. After we have this thing done, we want to wait 2-3 days, and then we're going to softly hit that. We got to use a little elbow grease once in a while. We can't just rely on buffers and honk on it too hard, or we're going to reburn it. So you can take a felt pad, which I use for sanding, and I also use one for polishing. Right here's one for polishing. They last a long time. You can take those, you can take it and dip it in a little bit of polish, and polish it by hand, so that you're not doing too much work with the buffer.
What compound are you using?
I'm using 3M heavy duty compound. Heavy duty. At this point, you may want to cut it. Use a little water there, and don't be as aggressive. The cutting compound is basically like, could be like coarse sandpaper. You want to add a little water to it. You knock it down to, from a 180 down to a 220 or a 320 by adding a little water. Now we got this thing all polished up. Now we have to let it wait another day or two. Is it going to come back? Is it going to come back? So touching up is a little bit of a chore, but you get in here again, we're getting into another week of touching up the process. Now you want to wait and clean the fingerboard on the neck. We're finished polishing the guitar. Now we're going to take the tape off of the fingerboard, and when you take it off, you want to work inward. Try to pull your tape inward, so if you go out to the outer portion of it, you could rip this finish off. Now we got our 1/16 of an inch bead after we had the tape on. The purpose of that 1/16 of an inch bead is so that we don't rip it off, that we stay on the top. Here we have certain knives that we use for cleaning binding and for cleaning the fingerboard. These are nothing more than hacksaw blades that have the teeth ground off. And a little bit of a patience with grinding the knives. It almost looks like basically like a chisel with a burr on the back of it. You got to have that burr on the back, or you're gonna not go any place in cleaning the filler off the binding, or even here in the fingerboard. Now we're going to take the tape. As the tape is off, we're going to take this, and we're not going to press down and press hard to get it off at one time. Don't try to get all this off, because 9 times out of 10 you could chip. Work at it slowly and work inward. All the way down the fingerboard, all the way down through. And naturally, we worked on this side of the fret. We got to come back this way, getting the other side of the fret. Then after you have your fingerboard cleaned off, you want to take a paintbrush, small little paintbrush, you want to dip it in thinner, and you want to hold your instrument on an angle like this, and you want to take that thinner and go right down that edge. That's to seal that whole edge. If you don't seal it, you could have a burr there and you could rip it back off. Then you take it on the opposite side and paint that down on that portion of it. Now we want to take the tape off the back, of course, and off of here, and everything comes together up in here. The tape comes off, and taking the tape off the top, it's the same way. Scribe around it. Don't just take your tape and rip it, because you could pull that lacquer right back off if it would happen. You want to allow the instrument to dry maybe like 2-3 days after you get it back from the finisher, simply because 9 times out of 10 he may be running a little late on it, and you don't want to do anything that's relatively fresh. Certain industries have what they call a little bit of a stockpile in their inventory. That's the purpose of it, that they work on these instruments while the others are being dried. When it gets up into when the body meets the neck and the body meet together, that instrument has about 3-4 days of drying time by being on the floor. When you come to put your neck in, be very careful. No phone calls, no disturbances. Concentration, because if you get the neck in the wrong angle, and it comes and you have it in the wrong angle, and before you know it, you don't realize it, then you come to put the bridge on, you got a misalignment. Now, how are you going to move the bridge after the lacquer is on, and then you got a space if you have to move that area there. So be very careful when you do the bridge. Some cases, if you know where the location is, put the masking tape down on that and stay in for about 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch on either side of the bridge. Now when it comes to taking that tape off, you want to scribe around, get down through that lacquer. Here again, you want to peel that lacquer inward so that you don't pull it out or pull it away. Make sure when you have that tape down there, make sure that you're down to the bare wood. Sometimes there's people put tape on after the vinyl coat, and the vinyl coat will fool you. You're not down on bare wood. You got to take a chisel and chisel that away. Now you got your bridge on, you got another couple days of dry time, got your neck in. and now you're ready to string it up, adjust your action, etc. I think basically, speaking, dry time is important on this. If you rush the instruments here again, it's not good for the instrument. It'll end up drying in and dry into the pores. Here's one here with Bear Claw, has a mild aging toner to it. That Bear Claw really is outstanding. Okay. Do we have any questions?
I noticed you didn't take the shoulders of the neck.
Pardon?
You did not take the shoulder land area of the neck. Do you not concentrate on putting any lacquer in there, or is it just whatever gets there from overspray?
Right here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't tape any. You can tape it. Usually, I don't have anything, there isn't too much lacquer there.
I was just wondering, is it a benefit not to have that area raw wood?
Yeah, that's going to be, you're going to have to do some tweaking when you do the next set anyway. And if there's lacquer on there, then you got a little trouble of it. It always wants to lift off at the corner, so you got to be careful. So I like mine. I'm going to be resetting, I'm going to be setting those necks this week, so I don't like lacquer on my cheeks for that reason.
So you put the tape right up to the edge.
I normally do, yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually tape that all off for them, but
Yeah.
yeah, because I got to tweak that anyway. Even though you may set the neck while it's in the white, the finish is going to make a little bit of effect there, so you're going to have to do a little tweak just to get it to drop in.
Now, John, when you set your necks, do you worry about the lacquer on the other side of that cheek face, what's laid down on the body, whenever you're going to try and scrape that back?
No, you don't. In fact, that's one area you don't want to glue that. I don't even put glue on there anymore. I used to at one time, but now that I can get a better joint, I don't bother putting glue on there. I know Martin stopped putting glue on there too. They just glue the actual dovetail tenon. Makes popping the neck a lot easier.
Answer, you're okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like some do and some don't.
As far as yeah, I mean it's a, if you like white or black. We all do things a little different. But I'll admit I'm very strongly Martin. I'm a Martin traditionalist.
Well, and aren't like Gibson guitars, they normally
Oh.
finish theirs with, well, I mean, he's asking, so.
Yeah, Martin. Well, Gibson.
I know you don't
well,
like
you know,
that.
Gibson just glues them right the hell on, then they spray over it. And if you ever had to pull a Gibson neck, you take a beer with you because you're either going to celebrate or cry, one of the two.
Maybe two of them.
Yeah, maybe a little Glenn Levitt just in case. As far as your guns that you're using, tell them the kind of gun, the equipment. What's that?
Yeah, I use El Cheapo guns. My guns come from everybody here of Harbor Freight. They have what they call the professional guns out there. About 22 bucks, maybe 25 if they go on sale, or maybe even less than that. It's a trick in adjusting the gun and getting the gun and the spray where you want it. But you can see this is done by Harbor Freight spray gun. So the whole trick is that you use those guns and you get a year or 2 or 3 out of them. They need repair, you throw them away and buy another. Sometimes it'll cost you more in lacquer and lacquer thinner to repair it.
Well, I have a SATA gun, and he told me that I did buy a Harbor Freight, and I was using it just intently for the sealer coats. I hate to admit it, it doesn't work bad. But like he said, as soon as they get gunky and shooting out, you throw them out and grab another one.
I have a lot of DeVilbiss guns over the years.
Yeah, they're good
I've
guns,
worked
too.
in cabinetry my whole life. I've actually started buying the Harbor Freight guns for $14.95.
And do you have an oil water separator on your compressor?
No, but yes, I do. I got a water separator on there. I should say I got a big filter right there in the output of it. And that I drain every night.
What
You
kind
should
of,
have,
your mask, you know, that's another thing, because lacquer, you get real funny. I start ringing Rocky Mountain High when I start spraying lacquer without a mask.
right, I don't wear a mask, but
He likes that feeling.
But there's a trick. You should have a flow-through system. By that I mean through the spray booth, and the air behind you should go right through. What I do is my spray booth, let's talk about my spray booth at this point. My spray booth is a variable speed. Amy knows all about that. Variable
Did you ever
speed.
see those cartoons where the chicken wakes up and bonks its head and the ball rolls down and the Rube Goldberg?
Yep.
This
What
is Rube
happens
Goldberg.
is, with my spray booth, I have, and I consulted Mike on this as well, I have a three-phase motor on the spray booth, but you got single phase in the garage. So at one point at Martin Guitar, I branched off from finishing, went into the string division, and I had the string division maintenance out there for I don't know how many years until they sent this string division down to Mexico. But these three-phase inverters, at times they would go out on us and it would cost more for a repair job on them. So I asked for a couple of them because they weren't heavy enough anymore to torque out the motors on the string winders. So what I done was I put a phase inverter on my three-phased motor on my spray booth. In other words, you're coming in with the phase inverter, you're coming in single phase, one simple 10, and you're going out of that three-phase. So I made my spray booth variable speed. I also wired up my shutter on my spray booth that it goes on automatically when I click my spray booth on. My ductwork that's coming in also has booster motors into it, and I can boost the air and have my spray booth down to just a couple RPMs. At this point, if you're spraying 3-4 guitars in there at one given time, I can slow my spray booth down. I got ductwork underneath my spray booth, which go behind the filters. I close the doors on the spray booth and I suck the fumes right off the floor, get rid of them in a hurry. What I do is I try, when I'm spraying like this and you're doing it at home, I try.
What did I do?
Somebody go out the
Somebody-
wrong door?
Yeah, somebody just opened the loading bag.
Yeah, wasn't us.
I didn't go anywhere.
What floor is the loaded dock on? Remember when that lady came in and asked that? What floor is the loading
The
dock?
third dock, third floor, basement. No, that was the unloading dock, isn't it?
Oh my God, yeah, it's on the third floor.
Yep, there she is, empty of that. So I can vary the speed on my spray booth, which comes in handy. The shutter is open. The air is moderate just to suck the air out. In my shop, I also have 3 fans that are constantly going 24/7, never shutting off, circulating the air. I got one air conditioner running to day and night to curb the humidity. This was the first year since I'm out in my new shop out there in 10 years that I was not able to keep up with temperature and humidity. It put me into a little bit of a frustrating ordeal because when you've got the humidity at 70%, the temperature at 80 degrees, and you got to be careful for the safety of the instruments. There was, I don't know how many times that I tried to shoot, and as soon as you bring that outside air into the good air, you went right back up with it. So you don't want to have the instrument right now, you don't want to have this bulge, top or back. You're throwing the person that's putting the neck into the instrument off, you're causing him problems because he has to shave down the bridge or saddle or etc. So it's very important that we all try to build in the same direction and finish in the same direction by temperature and humidity. Nitro likes 68 to 72, 74 degrees with humidity of about 45, 50%. You maintain that in your shop and you're building instruments in that way. I'm doing the instruments and finishing them. So everything is pretty well equal. Be careful when you put your sponge into the sound hole. Make sure you squeeze that puppy tight. Don't force it down. If you force this down, you're going to crack. You could crack the areas where you routed out for your inlay or anything like this. I use craft paper. Some of them use plastic cups. If you come to take the plastic cup out, be very careful. You got to do the same thing when you're pulling the sponge out as well as the plastic cup. You got to squeeze it or you're going to put big dents around your sound. So these are some of the little bit of pointers that are important as well. This is Northern Hydraulics. Harbor Freight has them as well. So, very nice tool. I use it hard. That's been about 8 years old and it's got a lot of miles on it.
Yeah. Have you ever tried those HVLP setups?
High velocity, low pressure.
Yeah.
Yes, I tried it and I didn't like it simply because you got to be very careful for air bubbles. Very careful for air bubbles. I'm used to the other guns. At that point, I didn't want to change. It's like anything else. If you were born and raised in it, some people like it. The body shops spray with a gravity feed on top. Some people do it that way. Your mix is important. Your pressure is important when you spray, and that you don't air bubble, and yet you don't want all your lacquer into the filter system. You want it on the guitar. So you got to make some critical changes there. I use the high build lacquer from Sherwin-Williams. I use the vinyls from Sherwin-Williams. If I need any help, they're right there to help me. Any other questions? John, yeah.
There was one time period, I think I've heard about this, where Martin had some problems with the lacquer actually coming off in large flakes or sheets where it wasn't adhering. And I was told that was a problem with the vinyl undercoat, the vinyl sealer. Are you aware of this?
I sure am, because the recipe from the original recipe of that, and I had adhesion problems myself, and it's just like anything else. You have to fight your way out of your problem that you do have. Here again, let's go back to where we started with the vinyl, okay? Then we put the filler on, and the original recipe that I have been using for 20 years called for a vinyl, and remember we talked about 50% thinner to your vinyl becomes a vinyl. At that point, they want that vinyl to dry no more than 3 hours, scuff, and add a sealer to it. Now your sealer is about 15% cut on your vinyl, okay? Your sealer then is applied to your vinyl. At that point was the critical point, and no matter what I followed direction, I still had ended up with a little bit of a problem. And the whole thing is you want to have a bite. You want to have a bite from your sealer so that it bites into the vinyl. Now, here's what I do. I had the same problem. They don't call for it in the recipe, but if you orange peel on your on top of your filler, if you orange peel at that point, and you know what orange peel does. Now, orange peel is nothing more than a little zigzag of air pockets in there. What I do at that point, I jack my pressure up. I jack my pressure up to about maybe like 35, 38 pounds, so that I'm getting a liquid on there and I'm not orange peeling. Immediately after that, remember I said that when they go into that sealer stage, I don't usually go into the sealer stage here. I usually take 30% of that sealer and I skip that vinyl. That vinyl and sealer, let's pretend I put it together on top of the filler. Make sure you don't orange peel, but immediately after that, maybe after this tacks from the sealer when it gets tacky, I put the clear lacquer on. At that point, you got a 1 hour dry time. Right there is the critical point. Okay? Now what kind they had out there, I don't know, but that's how I overcome mine. Because I was having the same problem, and it gets a little frustrating when you got to do the instruments over. It's double time. But I've been doing that for years, and it works. So, and after you got your first coat of clear on again, now you can go down to your 30-pound pressure. And make sure again here that you try to keep your liquid from orange peeling when you're spraying. What their problem was out there, I don't exactly know.
I think one of the things they had mentioned was that they were allowing, there was too much time, and they weren't applying the next coat
You're right.
soon enough, so there was no bite.
Right, right. See, that's where I cut that, I eliminated that step. That's when I said tack. When that tacky right there, I eliminated the scuffing, and I immediately applied the clear coat to it.
Okay.
I remember those when they called, I retired and they called me back for to help out. I lasted about 6-8 years, I think, out there after I retired. Only 15 to 18 hours a week was my limit. But I had a good time. I enjoyed every bit of it working out there. We all had fun, we all laughed, got our work done. It's a nice place to work, I have no qualms about it.
Thank you, Dale. Excellent job.
Thank you.